I never imagined betrayal could feel like a physical blow until the night I saw the truth in Eva's eyes. Not remorse, just rage at being caught. My name is Gerald Walker, and I'm 35 years old. I spend my days doing HVAC work, following the steady rhythm of installations and repairs that used to mirror what I thought was a stable marriage. The moment Eva attacked me at her parents' dinner table, hurling a wine glass before lunging with raised fists, Rick and Carol witnessed their daughter shatter every pretense. Instead of crumbling, I chose to fight back methodically. My divorce attorney, Amara Kemp, helped me build an airtight case that left Eva with nothing but consequences. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. You know how the first crack in trust feels like a paper cut? Small enough to dismiss, but it stings just enough to make you pause. That's how it started. Little things that didn't add up about Ava's schedule. Pilates is running late again, she'd text, sometimes twice a week. I remembered when she first started those classes, how she'd come home in workout clothes, face flushed from exercise. Lately, she'd return looking fresh, wearing office attire, carrying a hint of perfume I didn't recognize. The kind you'd wear to impress someone, not to work out. Then came the passwords. Eva and I always had an open phone policy. Nothing to hide, nothing to fear. But one morning, I reached for her phone to check the weather while mine was charging, and there it was, a new lock screen. "Just being security conscious," she said with a shrug that didn't quite fit. "I'm an HVAC tech. My job is finding problems before they become disasters, tracing small issues to their source. Maybe that's why I couldn't let it go." The signs kept piling up. Declined dinner invitations with friends, mysterious lunch meetings, and those constant texts that made her smile in a way I hadn't seen in months. So I did what any technician would do. I gathered evidence. Our shared credit card statements told a story Eva thought she'd hidden. The Ridgeline Hotel bar, Thursday nights when she was supposedly at Pilates, room service charges that appeared like clockwork. A pattern emerged in black and white, impossible to deny. The Lyft receipt was my smoking gun. I found it while reviewing our linked payment accounts, a ride to a condo complex across town. The name Jared Pike appeared as a saved location. One search on social media filled in the blanks. Early 30s, finance type, the kind of guy who posts motivational quotes and gym selfies. I sat in my work truck after a long day of installations, thermos of coffee cooling beside me as I spread the papers across my steering wheel. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windshield while I pieced it all together. The deleted messages I'd recovered from our family cloud account were the final puzzle piece, intimate exchanges that made my stomach turn. Looking at those messages, something shifted inside me. The hurt was there, sure, but stronger was a calm certainty. Eva had made her choice. Now I needed to make mine. That's when I knew. I'd confront her at Sunday dinner with Rick and Carol. Her parents' house was neutral ground, a place where witnesses would keep the truth honest. Eva couldn't spin stories or deny evidence with her mother's pot roast on the table and her father's steady gaze across from us. I pulled into our driveway, my decision made. Eva opened the front door as I climbed out of the truck, wearing that same secret smile I now understood too well. "How was work?" she called out, casual as always. I forced my lips into what felt like a smile. "Fine," I answered, thinking of the Sunday dinner just days away. "Everything's fine." Sunday evening settled over Rick and Carol's dining room like a familiar blanket. The pot roast, Carol's specialty, filled the air with the kind of comfort I'd known for years at this table. Steam rose from perfectly arranged carrots and potatoes, while Rick topped off everyone's wine glasses. The gentle notes of classical piano drifted from the corner speaker, a soundtrack to what had always been our weekly ritual. "How's work been, Gerald?" Carol asked, passing the gravy boat. "That heat wave must be keeping you busy with AC calls." I nodded, buying time as I arranged my thoughts. "Steady, lots of maintenance checks." The folder beside my plate felt heavy with truth. My hands were steady, steadier than I'd expected them to be. The casual conversation drifted for a few more minutes. I waited until everyone had taken their first few bites, then set my fork down carefully. "Eva," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Where were you Thursday night?" She didn't even look up from her plate, just smirked slightly. "I was out with friends." "Why?" The casualness of her lie made my chest tight. I reached for the folder. "That's interesting, because your credit card says you were at the Ridgeline with Jared." I laid the printed statements on the white tablecloth. And then the Hyatt. The smirk faltered. She looked at the papers, then at me, then at her parents. "You're going through my statements now?" "I'm done being lied to, Eva." Rick leaned forward, his expression darkening. "Eva?" His voice carried the weight of every value he'd tried to instill in his daughter. She whirled on him. "It's none of your business." Then back to me, color rising in her cheeks. "How dare you humiliate me here, in front of my parents?" "I'm not humiliating you," I said, maintaining eye contact. "I'm telling the truth in front of people who raised you to know better." The change in her face was like watching a mask crack. She shoved back from the table, her chair scraping across hardwood. "You want a show?" The wine glass was airborne before I could react. It shattered against my shoulder, red wine soaking my shirt, glass shards scattering across the tablecloth. Carol's gasp seemed to echo in the sudden silence. I stood slowly, palms raised, trying to create distance. That's when Eva lunged, nails extended like claws. Her fingers raked across my cheek before Rick could move between us. I felt the sting, knew she'd drawn blood. "Eva, stop!" Carol's voice trembled as she clutched her napkin, watching her daughter transform into someone none of us recognized. I backed away, maintaining distance as I pulled out my phone. The decision wasn't hard. When someone chooses violence, they've made the choice for you. I dialed 911, my voice steady as I reported the assault. "You're calling the police?" Eva's laugh was bitter, hysterical. "On me?" Rick held her back as she tried to move toward me again. Carol covered her mouth with shaking hands. In the distance, sirens began to wail, growing louder with each passing second. I touched my cheek, fingers coming away with traces of blood. The evidence was there, the slashed skin, the broken glass, the wine-soaked shirt, and now witnesses who couldn't deny what they'd seen with their own eyes. Red and blue lights painted the quiet suburban street, throwing stark shadows across Rick and Carol's well-kept lawn. Two officers stepped into the dining room, taking in the scene with practiced eyes, the overturned chair, scattered glass, and wine-stained tablecloth telling part of the story. "Sir, can you tell us what happened?" The taller officer pulled out a notepad, while his partner spoke quietly with Eva. I touched my cheek where it still stung. "We were having dinner. I confronted my wife about an affair she's been having. When I showed evidence, she threw a wine glass at me and attacked me." My voice stayed steady, even as the reality of it all sank deeper. The officer nodded, documenting each detail. "We can see the facial injuries. Do you have the evidence you mentioned?" I retrieved the folder, handing over the credit card statements and retrieved messages. "The hotel receipts, text messages, everything's here." From across the room, Eva's voice rose sharp and shrill. "This is ridiculous! He's lying!" She tried to step toward me, but the second officer gently blocked her path. "Ma'am, please stay where you are." Carol sat at the table, tears sliding silently down her cheeks as she watched her daughter. Rick stood by the window, his broad shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. The weight of witnessing his child's actions seemed to age him years in minutes. "Would you like to press charges, sir?" the officer asked. I met Eva's glare across the room. "Yes, I want to press charges." "You bastard!" Eva spat as the officers began to cuff her. "You'll regret this!" "Eva, please!" Carol whispered, but Eva ignored her mother's plea. They led her out, reading her rights over her stream of curses. The sound of the patrol car door slamming echoed through the neighborhood like a final punctuation mark. After giving our statements, I hugged Carol, who could barely meet my eyes. Rick gripped my shoulder, his voice rough. "I'm sorry, son. We had no idea." The drive home felt surreal. Streetlights blurred past as I replayed the evening in my head. The scratch on my cheek throbbed in time with my heartbeat, a constant reminder that everything had changed. I walked into my dark house around midnight. Dropping onto the couch, I spread the remaining evidence across the coffee table. Hotel receipts, bank statements, screenshots of messages she thought she'd deleted, the physical proof of betrayal laid out in black and white. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Walker, this is David Chen, representing Ava Walker. My client has posted bail and wishes to inform you that she will be pursuing full ownership of the marital home and joint accounts. Any attempts to damage her reputation will be met with aggressive legal action." I let out a slow breath, staring at the message. The scratch on my face stung, my shoulder ached where the wine glass had hit, and now this, a declaration of war delivered through careful legal phrases. Leaning back on the couch, I realized this wasn't just about the affair anymore. Eva wasn't just trying to escape consequences. She was trying to take everything. The house we'd bought together, the savings I'd worked overtime to build, my reputation. She wants everything, I whispered to the quiet room. Then I'll fight for everything. The morning after the arrest, I sat in Amara Kemp's downtown office, watching her review the police report. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the silver at her temples. Her navy suit looked crisp even at this early hour, and her reading glasses perched precisely on her nose as she flipped through the file. "The evidence is solid," she said, tapping a manicured nail on the credit card statements. "But we need to move fast. Eva's already lawyered up, which means she's planning something." She leaned forward, fixing me with an intense stare. "First steps. Lock down everything. Joint accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios. Document every injury. Get photos of that scratch before it heals. And absolutely no direct contact with Eva. Everything goes through counsel." I nodded, my hand unconsciously touching the marks on my face. "What's our strategy?" "We file for temporary orders immediately. Request exclusive occupancy of the marital home and freeze joint funds pending review of marital waste." Amara made quick notes on a legal pad. "Then we file for divorce, citing both cruelty and infidelity. The assault charges strengthen our position significantly." The word divorce hit harder than I expected. Memories of our wedding day flashed through my mind. Eva in white, both of us so sure about forever. I pushed the thought away. "Rick and Carol already called. They'll testify about what happened at dinner." "Good. Witness testimony from her own parents carries weight." Amara checked her watch. "Now, about the restaurant. The Ridgeline, correct? We need that security footage before it gets overwritten." By noon, I'd visited the Ridgeline. The manager, sympathetic after hearing about the assault, pulled up Thursday night's CCTV footage. There was Eva, clear as day, sitting close to a man I now knew was Jared Pike. More importantly, he had cameras covering the bar where she'd used our joint card. The timestamp matched my evidence perfectly. "I'll have copies ready this afternoon," the manager promised. 3 days later, we were in court. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and reading glasses similar to Amara's, reviewed our emergency petition. Eva's lawyer argued against it, but the CCTV footage and police report spoke volumes. "The court grants temporary exclusive occupancy to Mr. Walker," the judge announced. "Furthermore, joint accounts are frozen pending investigation of marital waste." Relief flooded through me. Finally, something was going right. Amara squeezed my arm as we left the courthouse. "Good start," she said. "But stay alert. Eva's not going to take this lying down." That evening, I drove home feeling cautiously optimistic. The house key turned in the lock, and I stepped into the quiet darkness. After flipping on the lights, I noticed an official-looking envelope on the kitchen counter. Someone had slipped it through the mail slot. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Inside was a legal petition. Eva was seeking an emergency protective order, claiming I had been the aggressor at dinner. She wanted me removed from the house immediately. The paper trembled in my grip as I read her accusations. Everything backward, everything a lie. The momentum I'd felt earlier evaporated, replaced by a cold knot in my stomach. I sank into one of my kitchen chairs, the protective order petition shaking in my hands. The photos attached made my stomach turn. A lamp knocked over, its shade dented. A small bruise on Eva's arm that wasn't there at dinner. Everything twisted into a funhouse mirror version of reality. "You have got to be kidding me," I muttered, flipping through page after page of lies. According to Eva's statement, I had been the aggressor, throwing the wine first, grabbing her when she tried to leave. The truth stood on its head, dancing for her convenience. My phone buzzed, a text from the court clerk. Until the competing orders were sorted out, I couldn't stay in the house. Not tonight, not tomorrow. My throat tightened as I packed a bag, grabbed my toolbox, and called Hank. "Stay as long as you need, brother," he said without hesitation. His spare room was small but clean, with a twin bed and a desk wedged under the window. I stacked my tools in one corner, hung my suit bag on the closet door. The room smelled like old books and fabric softener, nothing like home. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I called Amara. "We'll dismantle every lie," she assured me, her voice steady and certain. "Eva's making a mistake. False statements to the court have consequences." "How long until?" "A week, maybe 2, to get in front of a judge. We'll file our response first thing tomorrow. Keep documenting everything." After we hung up, I checked my work messages. A longtime client had sent a carefully worded email. Given recent developments, we'll pause the maintenance contract until your situation settles. My chest tightened. How many more dominoes would fall? Hank knocked softly, holding 2 beers. He didn't ask questions or offer advice, just sat with me in comfortable silence while I scrolled through more cancellations. His presence steadied me, reminded me I wasn't completely alone. The next morning, I photographed my face again in Hank's bathroom mirror. The scratches stood out angry and red against my skin. At Amara's office, we prepared affidavits, gathered the CCTV footage, and organized our response to Eva's claims. Hour after hour of precise, methodical work. The only way to fight lies is with documented truth. My phone rang just after lunch. Carol's name flashed on the screen. "Gerald," she said, her voice trembling with something between excitement and fear. "I found something. A message Eva left me the morning after everything. You need to hear it." I put the phone on speaker. Carol played the voicemail, and Eva's voice filled the room, sharp with rage. "Mother, how dare you take his side? After what he did, exposing my private life at dinner, so what if I lost it? He deserved—" She caught herself, but too late. "He made me lose it at dinner. This is his fault. Don't call me again unless you're ready to support your daughter." The message ended. My hands were steady as I saved the recording and forwarded it to Amara. Eva's own words, caught in a moment of fury, telling the truth despite herself. "Carol," I said softly, "thank you." I handed my phone to Amara. Carol's voicemail queued up and ready. Her office was quiet, except for the soft hum of a desk fan and the occasional car passing outside. The morning sun slanted through Venetian blinds, laying stripes across her polished desk. For the first time since I'd hired her, Amara smiled. Not the professional courtesy smile she wore in meetings, but something genuine and sharp. "This," she said, replaying Eva's furious confession, "is a gift. People forget phones are little court reporters. They capture what we actually say, not what we wish we'd said later." She leaned forward, tapping her pen against a legal pad. "We'll subpoena the Lyft driver, too. His testimony will lock down Eva's movements that night, prove she was with Jared." Between this voicemail and his affidavit, her protective order claims fall apart. The plan crystallized over the next hour. Each piece of evidence would contradict Eva's version, brick by brick, until her wall of lies collapsed. I remembered how she used to say I was too methodical, too focused on details. Funny how those same traits would undo her now. 2 weeks later, we sat across a narrow conference table for her deposition. Eva wore a cream blouse and perfect makeup, like she was heading to Sunday brunch instead of sworn testimony. She tried for cool detachment, but I caught the slight tremor in her hand as she sipped water. I met her eyes directly. No flinching, no looking away. "You hit me when I told the truth." Her mask slipped. "You ruined my life," she hissed, fingers tightening around her water glass. "You did that when you chose Jared over your vows, and violence over words." My voice stayed level, each word landing like a stone in still water. Amara began laying out exhibits with precise, unhurried movements. The CCTV stills came first, Eva's arm raised, wine spraying, her lunge toward me captured in harsh black and white. Next, the Lyft driver's affidavit confirming pickup times and locations. The voicemail transcript followed, Eva's own words undermining her claims of self-defense. Finally, the text messages. Dozens of them, each one proving the affair. Hotel meetups, secret rendezvous, lies about girls' night that hotel receipts exposed as room service for 2. I watched Eva's attorney as each new document slid across the table. His shoulders sagged lower with each exhibit, the realization settling in that his case was built on sand. He whispered something to Eva, who shook her head sharply. The questioning continued for another hour, but the fight had shifted. Every answer Eva gave had to navigate around hard evidence. Every claim of innocence crashed against documented proof. As I walked out of the deposition room, my phone buzzed. A notification from the court system. The district attorney had formally filed charges against Eva, misdemeanor domestic battery, the weight of consequences arriving in a simple text alert. I stood in the hallway, remembering how that Sunday dinner had started with pot roast and ended with sirens. How truth, finally spoken, had shattered our careful illusions. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as attorneys and paralegals hurried past, carrying their own files full of other people's broken promises. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected, just wooden benches, fluorescent lights, and the weight of consequences hanging in the air. I sat behind the prosecutor's table while she laid out the evidence against Eva. Photos of my slashed cheek, the restaurant's security footage, witness statements from Rick and Carol. Eva's attorney shifted in his chair, papers rustling as the DA detailed each element of the assault. The scratch marks, the thrown wine glass, the unhinged threats that followed. I kept my eyes forward, shoulders straight, though I could feel Eva's gaze burning into the side of my face from the defendant's table. Your Honor, Eva's lawyer started, my client is prepared to accept the state's plea offer. The judge nodded, glasses perched on the end of his nose as he reviewed the agreement. Mrs. Walker, you understand by pleading guilty to misdemeanor domestic battery, you'll serve 12 months of probation, complete anger management counseling, and perform 60 hours of community service? Yes, Your Honor. Eva's voice came out thin, nothing like the sharp tone she'd used that night at dinner. Very well. The court accepts your plea. The judge's gavel cracked against the wooden block. The temporary protective order against you will remain in effect for the duration of your probation, and I'm dismissing your petition for protection as patently without merit, given the evidence before me. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. One battle down. The divorce hearing came next, in a different courtroom 2 floors up. Amara moved with practiced efficiency, presenting exhibit after exhibit. Credit card statements showing Eva's hotel rendezvous with Jared. Bank records revealing thousands spent on gifts for him, drawn from our joint account. A pawnshop receipt for my grandmother's ring, a family heirloom Eva had claimed was lost. Your Honor, Amara said, standing tall in her charcoal suit, Mr. Walker has proven both infidelity and significant marital waste. We ask the court to grant the divorce and divide assets accordingly. The judge took off his reading glasses, looking directly at Eva. I've reviewed the evidence thoroughly. This court finds clear and convincing proof of marital misconduct. He turned to face me. Mr. Walker, your divorce is granted, final and binding. You'll retain the marital home and your retirement accounts. Ms. Walker's request for spousal support is denied. He continued, each word another brick in the wall between my old life and new. Additionally, Ms. Walker will reimburse Mr. Walker's legal fees, given her pattern of false allegations and the costs he incurred defending against them. The judge's tone hardened, and the family ring will be returned to Mr. Walker within 48 hours, or I'll hold you in contempt, Ms. Walker. The gavel fell again. Just like that, I was divorced. Free. Rain had started falling by the time I pushed through the heavy courthouse doors. Each step down felt lighter than the last, like shrugging off a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there. Then I saw her. Eva stood at the bottom of the steps, mascara smudged, hair damp from the drizzle. Her eyes found mine, desperate, pleading. She took a step forward, mouth opening to speak. I kept walking. Each footstep steady on the wet concrete, jaw set, gaze fixed ahead. Whatever Eva had to say now wouldn't change what she'd done then. The rain tapped against my shoulders as I headed for my truck, leaving her and her unspoken words behind on the courthouse steps. Eva's voice cracked across the wet courthouse steps. Please, Gerald, we can fix this. I paused, raindrops tapping against my shoulders. Behind me, I could hear her heels clicking on concrete as she hurried closer. For a moment, I remembered Sunday mornings making coffee together, planning our future on yellow legal pads at the kitchen table. But that was before the lies, before her nails raked my face, before she tried to take everything. Turning just enough to meet her eyes, I kept my voice steady. You're not my problem to fix, Eva. Not anymore. The words landed like stones in still water. Her face crumpled, makeup running as she collapsed onto the courthouse steps. I didn't stay to watch her cry. Some breaks need to be clean. 3 days later, Rick and Carol came by for coffee. Carol's hands trembled less now when she held her mug. Time was healing more than just my scratches. We thought you should know, Rick said, setting his cup down carefully. That fellow, Jared? He's completely disappeared on Eva. Carol nodded, her eyes sad but certain. She told him she was separated when they met. Once the arrest made the local news and he learned the truth, she spread her hands. He blocked her number, wouldn't even take her calls to explain. Ghosted her cold, Rick added. No goodbye, just gone. I thought about karma then, how Eva had tried to maintain 2 lives until both collapsed. Now she had neither. The apartment complex she'd moved to sat on the edge of town, the kind of place you end up rather than choose. She checked in with her probation officer twice a month. The retail job she'd taken didn't love her missing shifts for court dates and mandated counseling. My HVAC business picked up again as summer approached. There's something honest about fixing things. Diagnose the problem, replace what's broken, test until it runs right. The routine helped. Early mornings checking work orders, afternoons in attics and basements, evenings unwinding with a cold drink on my back porch. That Sunday, I invited Rick and Carol over. The kitchen filled with familiar smells. Pot roast, Carol's recipe this time. She'd brought rolls, too, still warm from her oven. We sat at my table, the same one that had witnessed the end of my marriage, but now it held new memories. Rick told stories about his fishing trips. Carol mentioned her garden club. Laughter came easier, less guarded. "The flowers are coming in beautiful this year," Carol said, passing the green beans. "Maybe you could come see them sometime." "I'd like that," I replied, and meant it. Family doesn't end with divorce papers. After they left, I locked up for the night. The house settled around me, creaking softly in the darkness. This quiet felt different from the silence of a broken marriage, peaceful instead of tense, empty but not hollow. I'd learned to appreciate solitude again. My phone buzzed just as I was heading upstairs. Unknown number. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Unknown number. After everything, I'd learned to be cautious, but something told me to answer. Gerald Walker speaking. "Mr. Walker?" A man's voice, hesitant. "This is Jared Pike." My jaw tightened. The last person I expected to hear from was Eva's former boyfriend. I waited, letting the silence stretch between us. "Look," he continued, "I wanted to apologize. I had no idea Eva was married. She told me she was separated, going through a divorce. When I saw the news about the assault," he paused, "I never would have gotten involved if I'd known the truth." "That's done now," I said flatly. "The past was the past." "Yeah. Well, I wanted you to know I've cut all contact, blocked her everywhere. I don't want any part of that situation." His voice carried a hint of fear, like he worried Eva's chaos might still touch him somehow. "Appreciate the call," I said, meaning it was over. We hung up without goodbye. Sometimes closure comes in strange packages. The next week, I threw myself into home repairs I'd been putting off. The living room walls still showed marks where Eva had staged her photos, knocking over lamps to fabricate evidence. I spent Saturday painting over those memories with a warm tan color that made the space feel new. The brush strokes were methodical, satisfying, like erasing a chalkboard clean. When Sunday rolled around, Rick and Carol came for dinner again. I'd gotten better at the pot roast, though Carol still gave tips about seasoning. We shared a bottle of wine and no one flinched when glasses clinked. The conversation flowed easier now, touching on Rick's retirement plans and Carol's volunteer work at the library. They felt less like in-laws and more like chosen family. You know what's funny about healing? It sneaks up on you. One day you realize you've slept through the night, or laughed without thinking twice, or cooked a meal without checking your back. The quiet in my house now feels right, peaceful instead of empty. Eva's still out there, of course. She works retail at the mall, calling out sometimes for probation check-ins. Her apartment's small, nothing like the home she lost. Jared's gone, ghosted completely once he learned who she really was. That's the thing about consequences. They don't ask permission to reshape your life. I want to tell you something. If you're where I was, staring at evidence of betrayal, wondering if speaking up will cost too much, tell the truth anyway. Get good counsel. Protect yourself. See it through to the end. You might lose some things along the way, but what you gain is worth more. Dignity, peace, and the knowledge that you stood your ground when it mattered. Standing in my kitchen that night, I reached for the light switch. The house creaked softly, settling into itself. Through the window, I could see stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Everything was steady again. And that steadiness? I'd earned every bit of it. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.